Considering this is a sequel, you'd think that the animation quality would be better than the original by a fair bit. Well, it's not. In fact, the animation style of Leo the Lion copies Kimba the White Lion point to point, even reusing character designs for new characters altogether, and reusing animations entirely from one series to the next. And of course they reuse their own animations too quite a lot. Though, given the time this was made, it doesn't surprise me actually. This started just after the original series finished, so animation was still fairly new. You can't expect something entirely new and exciting overnight. Still, it does keep a more grounded realism about itself. Kimba the White Lion did have a suspension of disbelief. You know, a bit more of a cartoony antics. Whereas Leo the Lion does not, which I guess is to keep the more serious feel when things actually do start to go wrong. It's passable. I don't really have much more to say than that. Oh boy. Okay, it's about time we got to the meat of this whole, I don't know, thing. This is probably the biggest problem Leo the Lion has, and the one thing that made it more infamous, if anything at all. The voice acting. It is rough. To start off, so many of the voice actors from the original didn't even get involved here, so a new cast of voices had to be put in. And every single wrong choice was made. It ranks as either deadpan voice for only one tone, or voice so bad I'd rather tear my ears out. You think you've heard some bad voice acting? Take a gander at this.
I don't know. The rest of your life is a long time, Rudy.
Let me go, let me go, let me go, let me go, let me go.
Leo, it's awful, 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 it's awful.
And they say I repeat myself.
Coco's parents kicked him out of the nest so he'd learn to fly on his own.
We're not rabbits at all. We're lions.
Lions? I heard lions were great fierce warriors.
And this isn't even including the main cast of characters. Here's some comparisons and you'll see well what I mean.
Kimba can outfight any animal in the jungle just like his father could. 1, 2,
Well,
3.
that shows you what you know. What do you know about medicine? Let me show you something.
Glad to meet you, Kimba. You saved my life. Thanks.
You didn't
Thanks
do a thing. You didn't beat Leo because Leo didn't fight back.
And the quality of the voices does not help either. Yes, they are clearer than the original, and yes, the difference between male and female voices are more prominent. I'll give it a point for that. But there's this one episode, the Saber-Toothed Tiger, I remember well before this review only because of those horrendous voices. It sounds like the microphones were not even hooked up right.
And you say your name is Leo now, is it? Well, that's as good a name as any other.
To put it simply, I've seen fan dubs on YouTube done better than this. So the world building in Leo the Lion is iffy. Kimba the White Lion may have given us more areas to visit, but most if not all of these are only explored in one episode unless they involve the main setting, like the restaurant or the farm. As for Leo the Lion, a number of areas are mentioned around the place quite a bit, but not explored as prominently. Rather, the series actually adds more to the pre-existing areas of the world instead of just adding more, namely to the jungle and those nearby. In fact, episode 2 has a lot of expansion on what's in Leo's jungle during the first few minutes. In just this one episode, there's the Fountain of Poison, the Snake's Nest, animal-eating plants in the east, the hyena territory in the foothills, a rival lion pride in the north, and apparently there's quicksand to the south. And I'm pretty sure there is a lot more dangers, just not really mentioned. Aside from that, there's Mount Moon, a very tall, seemingly cursed mountain peak that almost anyone is doomed to die on if caught on it. And for some reason, there's a lot of dinosaurs and Ice Age animals there too. Why? I don't know. I'm not gonna dump science in this, but it's weird to say the least. Some new areas are shown, but not as many as before. And apart from that, no area is really mentioned in a namesake, and more just as this jungle here, or that desert to your left, or something like that. I assume this is because people are plenty familiar with the series in such places, so why go over details they already know? Even if they don't show as many places as the previous series did, I'm glad those that are shown are at least given some time in the spotlight, and some more details put into it. Out of all its negatives, this is one thing I know Leo the Lion did better than Kimba the White Lion did before, and that's the landscape and artwork put into it. Much of the previous series is very simple in look, with simple colors and watermark backgrounds for many of the settings. Some are detailed, but not as much as they would commonly used. This time, the series has a lot more realism to the artwork, with more details to the landscape, and to say this is more of an art piece than just a background for the show. And so many of them are beautiful too, to say the least. As per character designs, as I've mentioned, many of these carry over from the previous series, so they're not entirely faulty. There are times though where a more detailed design was used, such as this giant crocodile with its very wrinkly skin and old looking eyes. Or this very detailed look to a frozen mammoth found on Mount Moon. Or this strange lizard monster which, on its own, is the only time this style was ever really used. Or its movement for that matter. And probably my favorite is when the characters suddenly change to this sort of detailed tribal design, where the lighting effects strictly go over the outlines to give off a more vibrant feel to the scene. So, what do I think of the Leo the Lion anime? Well, on one hand, it holds up just as good as the first series in a visual standpoint. The designs are nice, the background artwork is done much better than before, and for the story, it isn't as jumpy as before, so you can follow it a bit easier. It's alright. On the other hand, it falls flat in a productive standpoint. The continuity's out of place, the animation's not really different from before, except for a few parts, and the voice acting is so terrible it's almost funny. No, that doesn't save it. Now, do I recommend this? Well, I'll say this much. If you are able to get past the voices and watch the series for what it is, then you might even enjoy yourself. If you can't, well, then maybe go and watch something else.